course, the big concern with these high inflation numbers is the issue of food security. We're joined now by Food Forward Managing Director Andy du Plessis. Andy, good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. It's such a big concern because ultimately what this means is that South Africans are paying significantly more for what's in their food prices than they have in a very long time.
Absolutely, and deeply concerning. Hi, Kathy, thank you very much for having us. So of increasing concern to us with the latest numbers we've seen released this morning of 7.4% on inflation month on month is that people that are earning the minimum wage are earning about, the minimum wage is about 3,900 Rand, while the cost of a nutritious food basket for a family of 4 or 5 costs just over 4,000 Rand. So that's for a family that has an income. And we also know that one income is supporting 4 to 6 and even more people in a household. We're not even yet taking into account the huge rate of unemployment where there's just no incomes in the household and where people are relying on social grants or nothing. So we do find ourselves in a deep food insecurity crisis right now, and we will for the foreseeable future.
The big challenge, Andy, also becomes the fact that salaries have not kept up with inflation. So effectively, people are getting a lot less than what they would before with the same amount of money.
Absolutely. What we are seeing in the market is that salary increases have been very low or none at all, 2%, 3%, and they have not been able to be kept up with inflation. And one can understand why on the one hand, because businesses have taken a huge knock, COVID, the riots, the floods this year in KZN, and economic recovery has just not been there. As we can see, unemployment is just skyrocketing. Youth unemployment is of huge concern, but absolutely salaries have not kept up with inflation, which means that people have a less amount of money, but they have to spend more on things like food, grocery items, fuel. Electricity costs have gone up, and those are the kind of things that are warning signs for an ailing economy.
Of course, what it does, Andy, is that it brings us back to conversations such as that of the basic income grant. When one thinks about what one is able to get with that 350 Rand relief of distress grant now versus when it was introduced last year, not only does it need to be reviewed in terms of an increase, but we certainly have to be looking at broader ways to support the millions of South Africans who are not in work.
And this is where an organization like Food Forward SA comes in. You see, it is a basic income grant. That conversation needs to continue, and we need to find ways to be able to do that. But 350 Rand is not even going to come close to providing what people need to survive. As we've seen, as I've said earlier, 4,500 Rand is what's required for a nutritious food basket for 1 month for a family of 4 to 6. So we need to be looking at a few thousand Rand in terms of that, in terms of a basic income grant. But on the other hand, we do know that our fiscus cannot manage that cost. We have over 18 million people on social grants already, costing billions of rands to the fiscus. And we need to find other ways to be able to do that. And this is where organizations like Food Forward SA and the model we implement can come in handy. We do not procure food because it is too expensive and it is not sustainable. And we live in a country of contradictions where 30 million people can be insecure for 1 or 2 weeks of a month. But at the same time, South Africa has enough food or produces enough food to feed all its people. Yet over 10 million tons of that food is lost or wasted. And we need to do better to be able to make connections between our supply chain, where the food loss and waste is taking place, and we must be able to recover that food timeously and use that food to address the growing problem of food insecurity so that our people can eat nutritious food. At the moment, people are eating what they can to survive, and it's mostly unhealthy foods, which has health consequences for our economy, for our health system, and we just need to do better to connect the dots and make sure that addressing food insecurity, we use different models. to make sure we address that.
Andy, what are you finding when you're going out into communities and running these food distributions?
So over the last 2 years, our operations have increased, quadrupled. In fact, we were 2 years ago, prior to COVID, we were supporting 550 registered nonprofit organizations with food every month. Today, we are supporting close to 2,500 registered charities, reaching close to 1 million people every single day with at least one meal. But what we are finding is that the nonprofit sector is now constrained, and we just can't keep up with the demand. And we do need government to come alongside the nonprofit sector, support nonprofit sector with subsidies, and help those organizations that are providing food security, a daily meal to those that need it, because they simply can't afford nutritious food. And that's what's gone up in the last year alone. Our food price comparison year on year showed a 12.9% on average increase year on year. Fruit has gone up 62%, vegetables have gone up 9%, and people just can't afford to buy nutritious food anymore. They're buying cheap foods, and it's unhealthy, and it's going to cost our economy in the long run.
Our Food Forward Managing Director Andy du Plessis, thank you so much for your time tonight.